This is the Crowdcrux Crowdfunding Podcast with Sal Briggman, where we cover everything you need to know to launch a successful crowdfunding campaign. We speak with proven entrepreneurs who've raised money from the crowd and want to teach you how to do the same. Stay tuned because we're about to reveal how to launch your dream project. With your host, Sal Briggman.
Before we get started with this podcast episode, I want to take a second to introduce you to my friends at Fulfillrite. If you need help shipping out your Kickstarter or Indiegogo perks or rewards, Fulfillrite is the absolute best company for you. I've been working with them for a while and I can vouch for their services. They make it dead simple and take all of the headache out of shipping out all of those boxes, all of those orders to your backers and your customers. If you want to check them out, go to fulfillrite.com at fulfillrite.com. What up, crowdfunders? Salvador Briggman here. Welcome back to the Crowdfunding Demystified podcast. On this podcast, we bring on real-world success stories, people that are raising money on Kickstarter and Indiegogo, other crowdfunding websites, nonprofit crowdfunding, equity crowdfunding, etc., and we get into their heads and we start to understand what it is they did to get traffic and pledges to their project. You know, I honestly am so freaking blessed to be able to talk to these people. I think we're both super lucky that they're willing to be so transparent with their story and also to discover some really cool products that are out there, and that is no exception today. We talked with the creators behind Little Sophia by Hanson Robotics. So Little Sophia, you might have seen Big Sophia in the news on Jimmy Fallon, all over the web. This is basically like the AI robot that's kind of cool, kind of creepy, but also super innovative, who has a personality, who almost has facial gestures that are like a normal human being. You've probably seen a viral video at some point about Sophia. So now Hanson Robotics is coming out with Little Sophia, which is the robot's basically little sister. And it's a new kind of STEM, AI, and coding learning companion for kids. Really cool message, really interesting takeaways as well with this project. This was a very intensely, I think, dense episode in terms of the strategies that go into crowdfunding campaigns, because the person that I talked with actually as part of the team, he has run many other campaigns and also done product launches in his past. So we're going to get into that in just a second. The one thing I want to mention here is that PR is such a huge component of every single crowdfunding campaign. That is one of the hallmarks that you will hear in today's podcast episode, the impact that PR had. And I have a course out there for you that will walk you through some of the elements of PR. If you are interested, you can go to crowdcrux.com/PR, enter your name and email address, and I'll start introducing you to some of the concepts when it comes to getting a journalist to write about you, getting a publication to cover you, getting these media logos to add credibility to your campaign. The link for that is crowdcrux.com/PR, crowdcrux.com/PR. Hope you enjoy it, and I also got another announcement for you at the end of today's podcast episode. But without further ado, let's get into this podcast and how Little Sophia has already raised $181,000 on Kickstarter. Hey guys, welcome back to the Crowdfunding Demystified podcast. Excited to bring to you a two-time successful Kickstarter campaigner. His current project for Little Sophia by Hanson Robotics has raised over $180,000 on Kickstarter. He also launched another successful project. Today we're going to get into some of his lessons learned as well as this really cool project that he just recently launched. Billy, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me on.
Maybe we could start by you sort of telling listeners a little bit about this product that you launched, who it's for, what it does, and just give them an idea of what it looks like.
Yeah, so Little Sophia is one of the first humanoid robots that's ever been made, available to the general public at an affordable price. So we've basically taken everything we've learned with Big Sophia and we tried to wrap it around into a consumer product that, was targeted towards kids, but also, could be used by researchers and educators and labs, and really go to the foundation of what Hanson is all about from an AI standpoint and from how we humanize AI, and then also we really just wanted to use a lot of the conversational tools that we've, created for Big Sophia and put those into a product that would work for the general consumer. That's what Little Sophia is at its core.
And when you're talking about Big Sophia, this is that like crazy viral video of basically an AI robot that's kind of cool, kind of creepy, but really fascinating as well. The technology behind that.
Yeah. So Big Sophia is really, I think, one of the things that put Hanson Robotics, on the map in the robotics community. And it's Big Sophia travels all over the world and goes to events, and she's spoken to the UN. She's spoken at tons of events all over the world. She travels like crazy, and she gives speeches and, is really an ambassador for artificial intelligence all around the world. So, we wanted to take everything that we've created with Big Sophia and put it into, a consumer's type of product. And that's what we've done with Little Sophia.
And what's the aim at this? Like, is this to kind of introduce kids to robotics? Is it to give them like a sense of how our world is changing? What's the kind of the goal there? Yeah,
so I think there's a lot of goals with the project overall. I think at the core of it, it's an extension of what Hanson Robotics is. Mm-hmm. For kids, we wanted to create a product that showed how you can humanize AI, right? And then also show how, we could use, conversational type of content, interactive fiction content, to not only create an engaging experience for a kid or for a user, but also embed some, STEM and, kind of learning capabilities inside of there so that, a kid could be having fun playing with Little Sophia, but also learning things about AI and about, coding and all that kind of stuff. So, the purpose of the product isn't to be an education tool. The purpose of the product is to be a friend, right? But there's underlying in the content that we're creating, there is a STEM component of it, right? So we want to make learning fun for kids.
I think it has to be that way too. Like, learning is kind of boring, honestly, if you're a little kid. It's like you need something that makes it's like edutainment, It kind of seems it's also in line with like your other Kickstarter campaign. I believe that did like a little over $100,000 for the Professor Einstein. Like, that was in the same sort of vein of thought there.
Yeah, I think so one thing, I think, Professor Einstein had some successes, and there were some parts of Professor Einstein that were more challenging. Being a character like Professor Einstein, a licensed product, we're boxed in on what we can and can't do because of the license agreement and things like that. So with Little Sophia, we're truly creating the product that we've always wanted to create because we own the character, right? We own Sophia, the character.
Yeah.
So we're able to do things that, either we couldn't do because of the license agreement, or quite honestly, we couldn't do because it didn't fit the character profile of, Professor Einstein at the time. But
awesome.
So that's kind of.
I have a few questions for you here on your recently launched project, but before we do, I'd love it if I could just get a sense of like, what did you learn from your first campaign? From the Professor Einstein campaign. What did you take away from that project?
Yeah, so look, I think one thing that you have to do with crowdfunding in general, and I was not a part of the team that launched Professor Einstein, but I do know a lot about it because I help run that division of the company now, so I've heard some of the horror stories and some of the successes. Mm-hmm. And I've launched a lot of other campaigns, right, over the years. And I think one thing that you have to have when you launch a crowdfunding campaign is credibility. And I think there's different ways you get that credibility. But I think that is one thing that you cannot take for granted when you're launching any crowdfunding campaign, right? Is looking for some other outside source to make you credible. And I think that goes back to kind of it answers the question that's the negativity of crowdfunding, which is, it basically gives a stamp of approval to the consumer that yes, this widget or whatever it is actually going to be produced, and it's going to be produced to a standard that consumers are used to.
How do you think you can communicate that? Like, how is it that you appear more credible to consumers when you're coming out with an entirely new product?
Yeah, so I think there's a couple ways. I think the first thing is focusing on the team. So has the team created products before? You know, is the company doing something, you know, that they've already produced a type of product before? I think you're seeing more and more in crowdfunding, the more successful campaigns are definitely being done by, you know, companies that are more established or teams that are more established. I think if you look at a lot of the campaigns, you'll see that. Mm-hmm. And then the other thing is looking for outside validation, you know, for credibility. The easiest one, of course, is PR, right? So, you know, getting the media to back your project or kind of give your stamp of approval is huge in the crowdfunding world.
Mm-hmm. So it's almost like a testimonial, you know, when you have journalists or you have the media talking about you. I think that's kind of where the credibility comes from, because like if they have spent the time to write an article or to cover you, it almost is like this has to be a legitimate, credible company, you know, and they're doing something cool.
For sure. That's exactly what it is. Right.
You mentioned like with the first project, some of the horror stories that you had to deal with. Would you mind sharing one of them, or just giving the people an idea of what was happening behind the scenes there?
Yeah, I wasn't actually there, so I don't know all of them. But look, I think it's like anything, you know, launching. I don't care how big or small you are. Launching a crowdfunding campaign is insanely difficult. There's a lot of work. There's things that are always changing, and you know, you have to be willing to adapt and change, you know, the plan as you go, you know, based on those things changing. So I think, all in all, I think Professor Einstein went well. You know, I think it's just a function of, you know, that was the first project that Hanson Robotics had done, and you know, it ultimately wasn't as successful, I think, as everyone wanted it internally. But I think that's typical of your first product when you launch your first project.
And then you take those things that you learn and you sort of apply that to your next project. So like Professor Einstein, I know you said you weren't part of that team. Looks like it took them a little bit longer to sort of reach their goal. But with little Sophia, man, you hit this thing in like 2 days, pretty much. You surpassed your goal. I mean, you passed it wildly, and then you got over to the 100K mark, and it's been growing since then. So you definitely have taken some lessons you've learned there.
For sure. And I think the market's changed, right? So, I mean, I think that, you know, crowdfunding is still in its infancy, I think, if you look at the, you know, crowdfunding has done a lot for, you know, consumer products in the way that you can have an idea come to life, you know, a lot earlier, and a lot of products, you know, are able to be produced because of crowdfunding, right? So I think we're in the infancy of you know, crowdfunding being used, you know, as a tool to get products into the market. Mm-hmm. And that's changing, right? I mean, the way you used to launch a crowdfunding project a couple of years ago is very different than the way you launch it today. And, you know, I think that, you know, as you look at how you're launching things, you have to be willing to adapt and change as the times change, you know?
Mm-hmm. So to get down to like the brass tacks here, when it came to PR and your media strategy, what was your thought process there? Like, what were you doing to get the word out there about the campaign?
Yeah. So, you know, look, we were in a very unique position, I think, in a very unique position that I have never been in a company, where we had effectively a celebrity in the media, because that's, you know, Big Sophia, or Sophia, I call her Big Sophia because it gets too confusing, but Sophia, not Big Sophia, Sophia, you know, is effectively a celebrity. You know, we can pick up the phone and we can call some media outlets, and we typically get, you know, coverage, or we get an answer, right? So we definitely played the PR to our strength. So, you know, the strategy was to leak little Sophia into the world a couple of months before we were going to launch. And that's exactly what we did. So back at the end of November, little Sophia went on the Tonight Show with Jimmy Fallon at the end of November.
Wow.
And that was the first time the world had ever seen little Sophia, right? Mm-hmm. And then what we did is we kind of slowly teased the media with little Sophia over the so the three big ones before launch were, of course, the Tonight Show. She was on CNET at CES with Sophia, and then we actually launched the campaign when we launched little Sophia on the Today Show at the end of January. So, we played some pretty big media outlets to our favor, and it's worked, right? Along with a ton of other
strategies there. Yeah.
Strategies there. But that was kind of the overarching strategy, right?
When it comes to that, like, were you mentioning that you were doing a crowdfunding campaign, or was it almost just like now this kind of exists? Like this is now out there?
It was very much like, for the most part, it was just this exists, right?
Okay.
Like this is the new thing Hanson Robotics is launching. And, one thing you'll find when you use PR, depending if you're paying or not paying, right? Kind of a funny thing. Once you're launching a campaign or you're launching a product, then, media outlets will talk about it being launched, right? When it's in kind of that pre-launch mode, they don't really want to say, hey, go buy this here kind of thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
They might say something like, oh, learn more about, this product on, website XYZ or something. But, to get a big media outlet like the Today Show or, the Tonight Show to basically say, hey, go buy this thing on crowdfunding probably isn't going to happen. So you have to kind of, work around that a little bit. Right?
So it's kind of like hoping that trade name Little Sophia will get into people's heads, and then they'll search that, and then that's how they come across the campaign.
Correct.
Okay, cool. I've like considered, or I've talked with people who have like thought of maybe setting up like a phone number or trying to use media that way. It is actually really hard because, like, aside from trying to blast like a URL, it's kind of difficult sometimes to transition viewers onto another like targeted page where you can actually get them to take action there. So I do like that idea that you're kind of like branding Little Sophia. Like that's something really memorable. People can look on Google.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, that's what, that is product launch 101, right?
Yeah.
That's how you launch a product. So, I think people traditionally have treated crowdfunding campaigns different than, regular product launches, right? And I think there's a lot of success to be learned if you look at how, some of these really big companies over the years have launched products. And there's a lot of techniques and a lot of strategies. And, I don't think any of them are right or wrong. I think it depends on, the budget of the company and the timing and all that stuff, right? But, I think that you can use some of those more traditional launch campaigns for a crowdfunding campaign. I don't think it's anything wrong.
Yeah. I had to interrupt this podcast episode because I want to introduce you to my friends at The Gadget Flow. Their product discovery platform reaches 22 million people per month. They've helped more than 5,000 crowdfunding campaigns thus far, and they have a social media following of more than 700,000 followers. If you want to gain access to their marketplace and list your own product, you can go to thegadgetflow.com/submit and list your project today. Looking at your product, I almost feel like it's like an instant home run because like it's obviously Big Sophia is, as you said, a celebrity. It's so freaking cool, man. Like you coming out with this new product, it's innovative, it's interesting, it's helpful. Like you kind of assume from the back end like it's a home run, but at the same time, you have to put together good content. Like you have to have a good offering, as you would say in like marketing terms. What are your thoughts on that? On like putting together good content? What does that mean exactly?
Yeah, I mean, look, content is king. And content is really hard to generate early on, right? You're typically, it's kind of the chicken and egg or the cart before the horse type of analogy, right? Typically, when you do a crowdfunding campaign, you haven't gone through all the steps to properly create content for your product. So, it's not like a normal product where you're probably already into mass production or some form of it, and you have great product that you can photograph and video. You're typically dealing with prototypes or models, and it's just more challenging, right? So I think one thing you have to do out of the gate is when you're looking at your timeline for your product launch on crowdfunding, you have to set aside not only some time, but a significant portion of your budget on content creation. Just because, if you're going to run your campaign for 30 or 60 days, and then let's say you have 6 months before you're going to launch your product, your campaign doesn't end at the end of 30 days or 60 days. When your campaign ends, it's not over, right? I mean, you're still going to continue to sell your product or pre-order your product on a different platform or whatever, or your own website, whatever you're going to do, for another 6 months. So the content is going to continue to be used for a good 9 months, right?
Yeah. Let me ask you a dumb question here. So like when you say content, are you talking about like blog posts? Are you talking about images, like prototype images,
everything,
video?
all of it.
Mm.
I mean, all of it, right? So I mean, I think that what you have to look at is, if you were launching, let's say you're launching a product and not using crowdfunding, you're just in general, you're launching a product, right? You would have a whole content strategy behind that, so that 6 months after you've launched, you still are producing new content based on the content you originally created, right? And repurposing it. I feel like with crowdfunding, and look, this has happened to me a million times. You get 30 days into a campaign and you realize, oh my goodness, we've used up almost all the content that we created, and we need images like this, or we need this video created, or we need to rethink this strategy, and it's always a constant battle to get good content created, because at that point you're deep into the crowdfunding thing, right? Or you're deep into the, not only are you running this campaign, which is a full-time job, by the way. I think a lot of people don't realize how much work it is to actually run a campaign. Mm-hmm. It is a full-time job, right? Just maintaining it and dealing with, getting
marketing, the backers, creating the content.
Everything. I mean, people asking crazy questions constantly, and it is a full-time job. So you can kind of forget that once you launch, and then 30 days later you realize, oh my goodness, I need more stuff, right? Mm-hmm. Then you're going back to square one, right? Along with getting the product produced, right?
So basically, create really more content than you think you actually need.
Way more than you actually need. Way more, right? Like way more. And I think too, you have to budget for it. I think that's where a lot of projects fail, right? They don't budget enough money for that content creation. So
I think that's a really important point, and it's also one of those things where it's like, while you're in the preparation phase and you're doing prototypes, you don't really think about creating content. You're just kind of like, I got to get this thing made, I got to get this thing done, finding out the manufacturer, doing logistics. Like, you're not thinking about maybe taking the photo of what that initial prototype looked like, or taking a photo of your sketches, or taking some video of like, wow, we're getting this together, we just got the manufacturer. Like, you don't think about creating content or the story behind it as much.
Yeah, no, most people don't, right? And it's one of those things, it's like out of sight, out of mind until it has to happen. And it's a lot more work when you have to, once you've created your branding elements, and once you've created the type of content you're creating, like the level of professionalism, I should say, whatever you want to call it, right? Sometimes it can be a lot of work to go back and recreate that, given the budget you have, the time that you have.
Totally. Yeah.
So I think you have to set the bar where you want the bar to be, throughout the campaign and post-campaign, right? Because you can do, if you have, look, you can't actually produce a product in 6 months. So anyone that goes on Kickstarter and writes that they're going to have something in 6 months is lying, because you can't actually do it. That's typically people that have never done it before, right? So, let's just say you have 9 months post-campaign, right? Or six months post-campaign before your product is going to launch. Mm-hmm. Unless you're already into production, right? That's one thing. But if you're literally doing a crowdfunding campaign and you haven't even started the product development process, it's going to take a year, right? That's where I think bigger companies are succeeding, right? Because so many people have been burned on crowdfunding by products that
big promises but don't deliver.
Yeah, well, it's because they've never gone through a product, they've never done product development, right? And they either run out of money or the product's not as good, whatever. I mean, it's everything in between, right? Or it's significantly delayed. Like I just bought a product. I bought a product for my wife 3 years ago, right? This is wine thing, and it was supposed to come Valentine's Day 2 years ago, and it finally came this year at Valentine's Day, right? And it's a great product, and I'm glad they took their time and got it right. You know what I mean?
That's a big delay. That's a big delay, yeah.
Yeah, but it happens, right? I mean, it's hard to make things. I think people don't realize how hard manufacturing really is at scale.
And also like dealing with all the micro problems that kind of bubble up, Also, like on that front, so you've worked with other projects before, right?
Correct.
Can you give us a sense of like that, like with other companies, or just in terms of doing, I know you're very focused on the product side of the equation, like just doing other traditional launches or?
Yeah, so I mean, I've helped launch a bunch of different IoT products over the years, mainly IoT type of stuff. So a lot of mobile connected, cell connected devices in different arenas, right? And look, I think there's a model for success, right? I think that there's, like anything, you can go and you can, if you have a product that's, let's say, a wearable, right? Look, there's a lot of very successful wearable campaigns, and you can go look at those campaigns and model and figure out what worked, right, and what didn't work. I mean, it's pretty easy to draw those lines, and then just take that, and that's like going to Harvard for crowdfunding, right? I mean, it's the roadmap. Look at what some of these have done before successfully and unsuccessfully, figure out what worked, try something, made a little new, tweak something, and you'll probably be successful, right?
It's all about putting in the time. Yeah, putting in the time to do that.
It's a lot of work. It's a lot of work. And I really think, too, I think people need to value I think a lot of crowdfunding campaigns, right, are, when they're done by people that have never either produced a product or been in the product development game, they really should look at partnering with, a really big company, or partnering with some individuals that have had success in that, that they can point to in the campaign and say, oh, these, this is my co-founder, or this is, the product development team we're using, whatever, right? Just to give it credibility. Because I think that, that is the Achilles heel of crowdfunding, is the product development side.
Do you think when it comes to that stage, the product development, that it's basically all about like connections and relationships with manufacturers and different people in the supply chain? Or do you think it's just having a very crystal clear understanding of the different facets of the product and like having a good blueprint for that?
I think it's both, right? I think, anyone that's done product development, from a design standpoint to an actual manufacturing standpoint, it depends on which person you're talking to, right? So if you're talking to someone that, actually manufactures widgets, they'll tell you it's all about the manufacturing. If you talk to a really good industrial designer that maybe gets it to like a DFM, which is when the product goes from the initial design to the design for manufacturing phase, right? So that's kind of when you go do a DFM, right? That's when the reality sets in from a design standpoint of what's possible and not possible, right? And look, everything is possible. It's just a function of how much you're willing to pay, right?
And the choices you want to make, yeah.
So I think that's when the rubber meets the road, and that's when the delays start, right? And I think having a team of people, or partnering with a good manufacturer that kind of has a lot of that engineering and that design work in-house will really save someone a lot of time. I would suggest that someone, before you even launch a crowdfunding campaign, you go through that process and understand what the challenges that you're about to face, because every product is different. Every product has challenges. It doesn't matter what it is, right? It's a part of making things. Right?
Well said. Yeah. I think. So, well, just on that front, also just to expand on that point, it's kind of like making all of these micro decisions about what you want to include in the vision and what you don't. And kind of like as you go, that evolves. And also with your budget, naturally, you might be able to include some things, but not be able to include other things. I think when someone's getting started with it initially, it can be great to have all these incredible promises, but unless you research the back end there, you might realize you can't always support those. So I think that seems like what you're saying is basically do your homework when it comes to that.
Yeah, for sure. I think, I mean, making a prototype and making something that's actually manufacturable are two different things, right? Yep. And just because you can buy a sensor on Amazon or, whatever, DigiKey or something, and it says it's 10 cents, doesn't mean that when you go to actually manufacture it at scale, it might be more than 10 cents. It might not be available. It might be whatever. And the part ends up costing you 2 times as much. You just don't know it. Right. So I think it's very much like know what you want to make, validate it beyond just making something that works before you go and sell it. Because I have had so many friends over the years, they don't do that. And what happens is they make the product and they do $500,000, they do $1 million in pre-orders over 6-9 months a year. And then, of course, they get to the end of it and they've worked really hard for a year and there's not much money left over or any left over.
Yikes.
Because their costing was off, right?
Yeah.
So you just got to be careful, that's all. Yeah, it happens, right? You just got to be careful.
I don't think anyone wants that to happen.
No, but it does.
So I have one more question here for you while we got you. And also thank you for being really generous with all of that info. One of my questions was on Facebook ads, because I think this is, as you've noticed, has been impacting so many more campaigns in the last 2 years, people doing Facebook ads to get backers to their project. What are your thoughts on that, and what has worked for you guys?
Yeah, so look, this is how you create $1 million campaign, right? I mean, very, very few campaigns are going to be driven to even, I think, the couple of $100,000 success without using some form of digital advertising. So, just to get get it out in the open, it is expensive to start. It is expensive to scale. So one, I think that you have to look at is your budgeting. So, you should be able to generate a good return on investment, but depending on how long your campaign is, you will have to go out of pocket for some, if not all, of your ad budget. Mm-hmm. So, that's one thing. I think you either have to make sure that you have, some financial backing to float that ad spend, and that, it's money in and money out, right? I mean, as soon as the campaign ends and you get paid, you of course could pay off that debt or pay off that credit card or whatever, right? But, that's one thing. One thing I've seen a lot of companies over the years face is, they have a really high return on investment on ad spend, but, their credit card gets full and they can't continue to spend money. So that I would work out that and work it out on a worst case scenario. Two, I would partner with, if you don't know how to do digital advertising, then partner with a firm that is success-based and not charging you a percentage of ad spend. So I'm going to get nailed by digital advertising groups for this, but I don't believe that people should buy digital media and pay a percentage of ad spend. It just fundamentally doesn't make sense, right? So find someone that's good at doing digital ads and, broker a deal with them that is success-based, right? Where you're compensating them for some of their time because it is a lot of work to run digital advertising. Mm-hmm. But then there is a financial win on the back end to either hitting some metrics, right? That's the second thing. The third thing is the tracking. Specifically, Indiegogo is different. You can put a Facebook pixel and you can track conversion. So, Indiegogo is a great way to go if you want to be able to track conversion out of the gate. Kickstarter, you cannot track conversion. So what you have to do is you have to take, there are some reference tags that you can create on Kickstarter, which are great, but they don't always work perfectly. So one thing you have to do is you're going to have to just take, when you're running a general advertising budget, you're going to have to take it as, I'm spending X and generating X in revenue on my campaign, and that is what it is, right? It's the only way to do it. Mm-hmm. So those are the three things I would tell you. And the fourth thing, I think, is a thing that no one really accounts for, and it really helps with conversion, which is if you're running your advertising correctly for digital, right, on Facebook specifically or Instagram, Facebook mainly, your cost per click is going to be really low, right? Because the content is typically pretty engaging. So the cost to drive traffic is typically pretty cheap. What will really hurt your conversion are the comments. So we all know with the internet, there's a lot of trolls out there, right? And there's a lot of people that write crazy things. So when you're looking at your digital advertising strategy, one thing I think you need to include in there is having a team or a group of people that are managing the comments in the actual ad. So there's a lot of people that are going to write really crazy things in there, and it will hurt conversion. So having someone that can monitor those to eliminate some of the craziness is a positive thing. So that's just
that. Also, that goes down a whole other rabbit hole of the more positive comments you have on an ad, the way it can improve your conversions as well.
Of course, yeah. There's just a lot of crazy people. So a lot of the stuff that people write is completely irrelevant. It just sparks debate in your comment section, which it'll have nothing to do with your product, right? Mm-hmm. It's just people being crazy because they can hide behind a computer on the internet. So, you have to just have some, when you're running advertising, which is typically it's a 24-hour day thing, right? You need to have people, a good part of the day monitoring that, right?
Yep.
And just looking for the people out there that are crazy, because there's a lot of them, as we all know.
Yeah,
right?
Definitely. Well said, man. Well, what have you enjoyed most about doing these different campaigns? Because it seems like you have a pretty good handle on this. Like, you've obviously been doing your homework. You've been launching projects and products your life. What's your favorite part about this?
Yeah, look, so I think my favorite part is that I think we're in an interesting time in the consumer product world, right? Where, it's kind of an even playing field. And I think crowdfunding has done a lot for that, right? So I think the interesting thing is that if you look at the giant conglomerates or the really big companies in our space, it takes them years to develop a product. And, the reality is that, Sally can create something in her living room, and she can compete with the largest company on the planet creating products, right? And that's a beautiful thing that crowdfunding has done, which I think is fun for someone in the consumer product world, because it makes for a better assortment of products out there. And also, I think it overall just advances consumer products in general, right?
Yeah.
We're seeing innovation happen at a lot faster rate, and we're also seeing that. I'm seeing that the little guy can compete with the big guy. You can go from an idea to having a product on the shelf at a Target or a Walmart in a matter of 2 years.
That is so exciting. Yeah.
That didn't happen 5-10 years ago. That didn't happen.
Yeah. You also you have products, and think about all the impact that those products have on people's lives. Like, that is so cool to me. Yeah.
So I think that's what's changed, right? I think that, the internet is a huge push. The internet has really helped push that whole thing along. Crowdfunding is a part of that process, right? Mm-hmm. And look, I think generally speaking, as in the consumer product world, I think that, long term there need to be, and there will be, I think, better controls put in place of, how people launch things and when they launch. And I think the market will of course just force out the bad players in the space. Mm-hmm. And there will always be some of those, and we know that, right? But I think in general, we, as people who launch crowdfunding campaigns, we just need to make sure that we're doing the best thing for the industry and everyone as a whole from a credibility standpoint. And standing by our word and launching things, and doing our best to not launch things 5 years late or 4 years late, so on and so forth. So, and I think that will happen, right? I think that you've seen in the last 12 to 24 months, you've seen some giant players launch crowdfunding campaigns. I remember a year ago or so, Gillette launched on Indiegogo a product, right? So I think in general, the crowdfunding has become less of a way to raise money, and it's more of a way to raise awareness of a product. Mm-hmm. And I think that's a positive thing, right? Yeah. Because naturally it'll weed out the people that shouldn't be on the platforms.
Yeah, I definitely also have seen that, and I think it's inspirational. That's the whole goal with my podcast as well, is to bring some attention to these cool new products, these cool little creators. So thank you so much for coming on the show and sharing all of your information. Where can people go to learn a little bit more about the project while it's still live here?
Yeah, so they can go to littlesofia.ai or hansonrobotics.com. At any time, and those links will forward them to the appropriate pages at that time.
Great. So, awesome, man. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show. I appreciate it a lot, and we'll have to have you back.
Thanks, man. Have a good one.
Let me tell you about our latest sponsor, SendPro Online by Pitney Bowes. Shipping can be complex. Things can get really confusing really fast. With SendPro Online, it's easy to save time and money no matter what you send, from letters and packages to overnights and flats. You can easily compare USPS, UPS, and FedEx in an all-in-one online tool. You can print shipping labels and stamps directly from your printer. You can even track all of your shipments and get email notifications when they've arrived. SendPro Online is only $14.99 a month, and listeners can get a free 30-day trial when you visit pb.com/crowdcrux. That's pb.com/crowdcrux. Experience the convenience of SendPro Online for yourself when you sign up for a free 30-day trial. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Crowdfunding Demystified podcast. Again, my name is Salvador Briggman. I feel really privileged to be able to talk with the team behind this project. I think they brought their A game. Billy was so helpful when it came to sharing advice and tips related to crowdfunding, as well as having a really innovative product. This is a next level, next generation kind of thing, like AI and advanced robotics. One day I think is going to take over the world. It's so cool to me. We're seeing this integration between human beings and machines, and I don't even get into all of that, but I just think it was really cool to learn a little bit about little Sophia and also the ways that robotics and AI are changing the world as we know it. If you enjoyed this episode, take a second to show some love, leave some feedback via iTunes on this podcast, share this with a friend if possible, and also I hope that you check out the course that I mentioned before, the PR course that goes into how to get media attention and different media mentions, how to get credibility through the media. That link is crowdcrux.com/PR, crowdcrux.com/PR. And in addition, the other announcement that I have for you here is that if you enjoy my podcast and you at any point in time have ever thought of doing your own show, like your own podcast, talking to people, interviewing guests, getting your voice out there, talking about topics that you care about. Maybe that topic could be about business, could be fitness, could be spirituality, entertainment, maybe even comic books, politics, etc. There is a podcast out there for anyone. If you've ever considered launching your own show, I want to show you step by step how to do that, and also share with you some of the lessons that I've uncovered by doing my own show. More than 250 episodes now, hundreds of thousands of downloads, tons of people loving it. It's transformed my brand. It's made me have just a deeper connection with my own community, and it's also led to a lot of growth in terms of revenue for my business. So if you want to gain access to that, I have a free course that walks you through how to start, grow, and monetize your podcast. And I share with you things in that course, like what is a good equipment package, what are some of the things I learned about interviewing guests, how do you actually sound better, these different things. If you're interested in getting access to the link for that is crowdcrux.com/free podcasting course. That is crowdcrux.com/free podcasting course. Just enter your name and email, and I will start getting you up to speed on how to start your own podcast. You can reply to any of those emails, and we can get this underway. So hopefully you can launch a successful show. And also I bring my same teaching style to that, of being kind of no nonsense, not really throwing away too many technical terms. I kind of like to keep things simple as possible and get this thing up and running as quickly as possible, while also having really good quality and resonance in your voice, and also having a good microphone to pick that up, and everything and how it works behind the scenes. So finally, that link, crowdcrux.com/free podcasting course. Hope you enjoy it, and I will see you next time.